This is the Mooncast. Hey bro, I'm just trolling is something that will not just challenge your perspective, but also touch your heart and soul. It's a book that defies convention, blending art and literature into a thought-provoking masterpiece. A reflective piece of provocative art that tackles societal constructs from angles you've never considered. Hey bro, I'm just trolling delves into the very essence of our existence. It questions the technology that surrounds us, challenges our notions of beauty, stares unflinchingly into the eyes of death, and questions the boundaries of freedom. It scrutinized the educational system that molds our very future. This book is a journey, an exploration of shared human experience, and it's a work of art that refuses to be confined by tradition. It's a canvas painted with words, a melody of thought, and a testament to the power of creativity in a world dominated by algorithms and data. Visit moonboycapitalventures.com and get your hands on Hey Bro, I'm Just Trolling today. It's not just a book, it's a movement. Now let's jump back into the show.
Dude, how are you, man?
It's been quite hectic these last few days. Been absolutely like a roller coaster. So yeah.
Where were you at again? You before the sickness.
I was in Singapore, came back, and then now I'm catching up on a backlog which is like nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, you just recently just got a new position, right?
Yeah, working with this company, CellarDAO, a very interesting project. So we can talk about that. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not the only one in the sense that I'm working with other companies as well as advisor. So it's been an absolute roller coaster.
Yeah. How is it at CellarDAO? What do they do? Just mainly.
That's let me tell you something about that. It's quite an interesting, I'd say, pioneering project in the blockchain space. So basically, the DAO is an investment fund for backed by real world assets. So basically, we are investing prestigious wines and spirits. And actually, I'm not everyone is aware, but prestigious wines and spirits, they have outperformed traditional asset class by far. Like we're talking about even spirits like 300%. So you have to think as wines and spirits, of course, fine labels as luxury or art, same. So it's quite similar. I actually was really interested in this project, got in touch with the founders. I've got experience in the wine world as well, because I was working for 12 years before the Web3 came in the picture. I was working, I set up actually my marketing service company, and we were mainly working with FMCG brands, F&B brands, wine estates, and it was very, very interesting. So seeing that moving into the blockchain and Web3, it's kind of electrifying.
What do you think is the best form of marketing currently now within the crypto space? Do you think it's mainly which platform do you think is best? Do you think it's Twitter? Do you think it's YouTube? Do you think it's LinkedIn? Where do you see the best conversions being?
It really depends on the audience and the target audience of the project. So if a project is mainly serving or addressing B2B or partnerships, probably I would say LinkedIn and Twitter are still the place, the channels where to go. If you are mainly working on a retail or mass market type of product service, I'd say that definitely Twitter, Discord are the place to be. I mean, all in all of these channels, they have a purpose, but I would say that probably LinkedIn is feeding more a savvy type of audience, and probably more institutional type of audience. And networking effect of LinkedIn, I think, is absolutely unparalleled. Whilst Twitter is great for really great mass markets, NFTs was like, the place where to go. I'll be looking at, actually, I'm very curious at like, Web3 social media platforms like, Lens Protocol. Probably you've heard of them.
Mhm.
I know there are some projects building on Lens, and I'll be very curious to see how this is going to, and unfold.
Yeah, for sure. When you talk about Seller DAO, is it built on Ethereum or where's it built on?
It's built on Polygon,
Okay, so
so it's EVM, yeah, absolutely, and basically now the let's call it the test net, which is not really testing; it's already live, it's
Mhm.
already up and running. But we have plans to build our own NFT marketplace,
Mhm.
because basically what we are doing, we are tokenizing our investments. So
Mhm.
whoever is basically holding the cask token is
Mhm.
going to be eligible for many things. Like, it's a governance token, so
Yeah.
they might get like some interest out of the performance of the DAO,
Mhm.
voting rights, and they might redeem the products soon in the future. In fact, in our plans, we have an idea of launching our marketplace where basically tokenize NFTs in the form of NFTs. They can be traded. So we create a liquid, quote unquote, liquid
Mhm.
marketplace that is going to be 24/7 active, and prestigious wines can be traded there, spirits, of course, and like, for instance, like, a very prestigious spirit, which a bottle might cost like, 10K, 10
Yeah.
grand.
Yeah.
Like, and for real, there are some, they are absolutely like, collection bottles. They can actually be bought and purchased. We might purchase them through our funds and tokenize them, and basically people can actually participate as a fractional ownership on that NFT, for instance, and that can be sold anytime on the marketplace in the future. At the beginning, probably not a NFT marketplace, but soon in the future we're gonna have our own vertical marketplace for wine and spirits.
Yeah, for sure. Like when you talk about the fractionalized NFTs, I definitely really think that that's where the bridge is going to happen mainly between
Yeah,
retail and, the tech nerds and so on and so forth. Because for instance, like I think of the use case, for instance, like with real estate, because as the prices are still continue to get higher and higher and higher, well,
yeah,
the prices aren't really getting higher, our dollars is getting depreciated in value.
yeah, yeah,
But the point is the dollar amount is getting higher within the asset, so it's going to become less and less affordable for the majority of the population. And I think fractionalized NFTs would be a really good route in which you get a group of 5 to 10 people within a marketplace, and they could all cohesively put their funds together and buy a percentage through the NFT, and the NFT shows the ownership, and then you bypass all the different middlemen that you have to pay commission fees and so on and so forth. And then when you don't want the NFT anymore, or you don't find the profits that you're generating, because it's more than likely going to be an investment property for this type of use case, right? When you don't
yeah.
want it anymore, you can just basically just put the NFT back onto the marketplace. I don't know what you think about that. Also, I wanted to also NFTs too as well can also be used for. I just thought about it in my head now, but if you look at airplanes, for instance, like when you're getting a ticket, you could, and it's like last minute, like you don't want the ticket anymore. What if you could post it into a marketplace and do the same kind of
Yep.
thing? And someone else could just buy the NFT, and they would have show ownership, digital ownership, and be able to get on the flight. Yeah. So I think,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Actually,
Yeah.
NFT, it's actually a means to carry some relevant data
Hmm.
of that specific asset class or that digital twin.
Hmm.
Um, in our case, for instance, just to put in the context, an NFT is carrying not just the certificate of provenance, which is absolutely relevant in the one world, but also a certificate of ownership. So whoever is owning that, he has a certificate that belongs to him. And even that is quite relevant, especially if
Hmm.
you are putting in the context of fighting counterfeited labels, for instance, which is
Hmm.
quite a big thing, especially like, prestigious wines, they suffer of like 20%. There's like a massive loss in terms of value because of, fake, cheap or even like counterfeited wines labels. So we prove that because we actually buy from the origin, right from the producer, and we hold the wine or the liquid or the juice at the producer's premises. So we have actually, when we tokenize, it doesn't mean we create this like fancy label and we put it as an art piece of on OpenSea. No, that's actually far from that. What we are basically doing, we provide origin, certificate of origin, so we know that that wine is really the wine that's been produced from that wine maker, and and we track that. So basically, it goes in the domain of like tracking, having the whole supply chain tracked and traced on blockchain. So that's actually one of the greatest purpose, in my opinion, when it comes to using blockchain for a real driving purpose in that sense.
For sure. When you look at the crowdfunding space, right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing I think about with NFTs. You think NFTs are the best form of crowdfunding, or is it ICPOs, stake drops, airdrops, things of this type of nature? What do you think is the best way in which to crowdfund your project or crowdfund an asset, like real estate or something like that?
I've been advising different companies, different stage and different type of companies. Now, what I think is very relevant and mentoring actually startups at Excel Venture, the Algorand Foundation. I always told my peers that the most important thing is that there has to be a clear revenue model behind every fundraising process. All the more now that we are in this crypto winter, bear market, whatever. It's very hot here, so it's quite bizarre that I'm saying that, but it's still very, very cold in terms of like markets, crypto markets. But whatever, regardless of what is the current cycle of the market, you need to have that in mind. Whether you are a Web2 or a Web3 founder, revenue and your business plan has to be consistent with your long-term goals and your purpose. So that is what I think it's key for founders and builders to understand. Now, once you have that goal in mind, and once you have established how your revenue cycle is going to pan out, your tokenomics need to sustain that revenue model. And once you have finally established your tokenomics, possibly audited even by an external party, then at the point you can address your fundraising in a more conscious way. Now, the time of ICOs and all these NFT raise, it's, in my opinion, totally over. And it's a good thing, actually. It's good news. But I'm seeing founders struggling to raise capital. It's no mystery that VCs are dry now because they have invested heavily during the bull markets, and now that the token is down, they are basically stuck. So, that's something that's the liquidity, that the money that is flowing in the market is really, really at probably one of the lowest point in time. But nevertheless, you are raising with the idea of generating value, and that is where I go to. So it's better to pivot on a small scale rather than to a full extent, and trying to make that pivotal stage sustainable in terms of revenues, even proving that you are able to generate some revenues at some point in some form. It will give you access to probably better funding opportunity when the market is going to kick in to higher levels again.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say, between the tokenomics and the value proposition in regards to being able to generate some form of profit or having some kind of profit generating strategy, where do you think it's the most trouble that a lot of founders are facing between these two, the tokenomics and, trying to generate some kind of profit generation strategy? Like, what do you think is the pain point, the massive pain point between those two?
Massive pain point is Web3 sustainable business model. So regenerating revenues, that is the pain point. And it's been so pumped in the years before that this idea of really generating revenues when we can actually trick or spoil
Yeah.
Why? I mean, like we just like build any NFT project. We're going to collect a couple of million, rug pull, and that's it. That narrative is over. That
Yeah.
narrative is over, and now value is what's essential. So
Mhm.
builders, they need to focus on value prop and purpose. The purpose,
Yeah.
possibly serving real world problems rather than solving problems that no one really care about, and they are
Yeah.
strictly related to blockchain, unless you are a DeFi protocol or a layer 2 or a ZK rollup. That's very specific, but I'm talking about builders with working on dApps, or as I said, we are working on RWA, which is really something extremely tangible.
Hmm. Because you mentioned Algorand, so you've had some experience working with them, and I just saw recently, I think sometime this year or whatever, I read an article that said that they are quantum resistant. Is that true?
Oh, that's there's a migration of Algorand from JS to basically working on Solidity. That's actually the main thing.
Hmm.
For the quantum, I'm not 100% sure. I can actually talk about that because
Yeah.
that's in their plans for sure. But I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. And when you look at the landscape of the scalability issues within the cryptocurrency space, because everything basically at layer one during the peak of the bull run was kind of stagnant. Even Solana was even hard to move tokens. At some point.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
infamously known for, I don't know, 1,000,000 whatever transactions per second or whatever. But my thing with layer two is that it's a bit more centralized. Like when I look into the Lightning network, for instance, in Bitcoin, I look at Polygon and ZK rollups and Optimism and Arbitrum and all these things. Base, even now Coinbase launching their layer two scaling solution, it's a bit more centralized. Do you think that there's always just going to be this trade-off that we're just going to have to decide whether we want to transact, and because when we're trying to adopt this thing at a global scale, we're talking billions of users using blockchain technology, and
Yeah.
imagine billions of users using Bitcoin. It's going to take what, 7 days for your transaction to go through, at layer one. So I don't know what you think about the trade-offs with going and moving your capital to layer two. And do you think there's going to come a point in time where most of the value is being transacted in layer two, or is it going to be just basically layer one will be kind of like a savings account, layer two maybe like kind of like a checkings account, and you're kind of just funneling a percentage of your value from layer one to layer two, but you're keeping it safe more so at the base layer. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I do believe that ZK Rollup, actually, they are providing an efficient and very transparent, so to speak, but very say secure way to transact with a
Mm-hmm.
great performance. So TPS is quite interesting in that
Yeah.
sense. Of course, we have very highly performing layer two coming in space, say Linea, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that at scale, we need to see how their infrastructure, if our infrastructure is going to cope with
Yeah.
that amount. And I think the bottleneck is more than how well is built a protocol or a layer, is going to be actually the infrastructure. So I'm talking about storage and CPU. So computing power.
Mm-hmm.
That is, my opinion, is going to be the next big bottleneck. If we get to the point where we have that bottleneck, because now, in all fairness, we don't have enough, mass adoption that we are really not coping with the amount of transaction that we need. As
Mm-hmm.
per layer two, yeah, definitely it's a narrative. I'm a big believer in interoperability. So chain interoperability, layer zero is something that I'm really, really interested into.
Me too.
So I would say that is the future, and what we need to build, and even this again goes back to the builders purpose wise, is that we don't need to build with technology in mind. We need to build to solve problems. Hence, people from wherever they are coming from, say Web 2 or Web 3, or even not even Web 2 or not even web friendly, but if they are basically using the service, technology needs to be like, abstract
Yeah.
in a sense. So we don't really need to look at that in that sense. So it's actually serves the purpose, but it doesn't need to be the purpose. Technology always been like that. It's like saying, imagine Amazon pitching back in those days, say we are an HTTP type of company. Like that doesn't make any sense. It's like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And when you speak about interoperability, the two that come to mind for me are like Cosmos and like Polkadot. And I don't know if you're familiar or you're interested in those two mainly, or there's others outside of that you're specifically kind of looking at. And I like Stargate too as well. I see what they're doing in regards to trying to natively bridge assets, to make it more easily accessible to be able to move tokens from one ecosystem to another, because I think that's a huge bottleneck in regards to the value transfer, right? Because if I have BTC and I want to move it into the Ethereum protocol, I usually have to get a wrapped asset.
Yeah.
And so it's not the actual native asset that I'm moving. So there's sort of these solutions that are being made over the course of time. And for instance, like with Layer Zero, I really like Cosmos a lot because of the ease of use with the standard development kit that they have, and also they have the implementation too as well. The stake drops, to help more so for the marketing and to onboard new projects too as well. And it's a very, very interesting ecosystem for me. I'm not so much into DOT just because I don't like the crowdfunding aspect of how it works. I think it's a little bit. I think it's not the most enticing, the most sexy, the most attractive way, I think, to onboard a lot of investors, because you need to lock up your DOT for a set amount of time, and you pledge that DOT to be able to get access to the new equity, for the whatever project that's launching, and then becomes a relay chain, for the pair chain.
Yeah.
But I don't know what you think about the interoperability solutions that we have currently, and where do you see, for instance, how they can be maybe potentially be improved, or what do you see in terms of the landscape of interoperability currently right now?
Well, I've seen like a great development from chain analysis. They are building their interoperability module. Let's see how it's going to pan out. As I said, Layer Zero, Cosmos. Cosmos is great. I mean, with Osmosis on top, they're how easy it is to build on Cosmos with their SDK. So yes, definitely there are players now. I think I made a post about that a few weeks ago. So it is definitely whoever is going to take on the role, whether it's like chain analysis or Layer Zero, it doesn't really matter. It matters that we have basically a sort of an idea of aggregating all the chains that we have, and being able to agnostically migrate our assets from place A to place B.
Yes.
Whether it's an NFT, whether it's like an asset on a gaming platform or a token. That's what will make, actually probably will let people embrace blockchain technology more. But again, to me, apart from the technical foundation, that is a requirement actually to go mass market, it's what we build on top, and it has to be with the mind of someone who doesn't need to know that the blockchain is interoperable underneath. That's really for tech people. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah, when you talk about, for instance, like when you're trying to onboard the users onto the space, I think that's another area of focus too as well, is I think we don't pay attention enough to being able to make it easy to onboard, make it more seamless, that transition from fiat into the Web3 space, because a lot of steps that you have to do, if you just look at it from even the beginning, the baseline, first so I have fiat in my bank, then I have to go through out on, let's say, like a Binance or something like that, to then get verified and get an account. Then I want to take my tokens off of Binance after I've swapped them for fiat. Then I have to download a wallet. Then I need to get a private, seed phrase. And I have to save the seed phrase. And if I lose the seed phrase, then so I think there's a lot of issues. But I know Ethereum, for instance, came out with this proposal. I don't know if you saw it, the EIP 4337, where you have the optionality to sort of do like these multi-signature type of wallets. And so you sort of decentralize the private key, right? to 3 different separate entities, and only 2 out of the 3 entities need to have access to the private key for you to get access to your value. So in case of the event that you lose your private keys, well, you've given one of them to a best friend, you've given one of them to maybe the company itself, and you need 2 out of those 3 to be able to then verify that it is you. So it's sort of social, decentralized, multi-sig type of situation. I don't know what you think about this solution.
Well, it goes down to the stream of SBT, so bound tokens, and that makes it's been debated actually for a while. How are we going to secure SBT in the case seed phrase is lost, and I'm going to ask your best friend if he's still your best friend. So that is actually an issue. What I would say is that when it comes to security, in my opinion, everything that is make not just the blockchain safer, but actually seamless, the access to the product that's been built, the better. And we are just actually waiting for that. So UI, it's problem number 1, I would say, definitely. And technology is cumbersome. So that's problem number 2. And then we have fragmentation of different chains, and fragmentation that leads to fragmentation of liquidity, making certain applications completely not usable because they are not, they can't access other markets. So that's problem number 3. So I think we need to, focus on different blocks at this point to make basically the experience completely seamless and agnostic.
Yeah, for sure. And when you look at, for instance, the dangers of the cybersecurity, right? Because as you know, there's a lot of hacks, smart contracts that, get exploited. And you also then get people getting, victims of phishing and malware. And I'm trying to figure out, because I can't think of there's not really one solution I can think of outside of education in regards to what other solution that we have available currently to us, what other solution we could come up with in regards to getting people to understand the importance of, understanding, when something's phishing, understanding what malware is, understanding hardware wallets, and the importance of those, in case someone does get access to your wallet, well, they can't because they need a 2-factor authentication device to be able to then move the funds outside of your wallet, and that's why I was so adamant about starting this podcast, that I did, because I think the problem is education. And it was frustrating for me seeing people lose. Sometimes I know people that have lost, $500,000 plus from crypto. And it's quite disheartening, because I really truly believe in this space. But I just want to ask you, how do you think we can solve the issue of, cybersecurity and, these hacks happening, on a constant basis, and these smart contract exploits? And how can we stop these projects from launching without the proper auditing? I think that's another issue too as well. So maybe there needs to be some kind of, for instance, with Play Store, there needs to be maybe some kind of DAO, in a sense that you have some kind of where you launch all your dApps in this particular DAO, and then that DAO vets the projects, and so it makes it a little bit more safer for individuals in terms of they rate the risk in regards to, hey, you shouldn't get into this dApp. I don't know what you think about this, but this is just kind of a brainstorming idea just came up on the fly.
Look, it's a multifaceted, faceted problem, in the sense that you need to tackle security from different angles, from legal point of view, from technical point of view, from education point of view. So you need to, in my opinion, see that as a pyramid, and you have 3 different layers. Now, first and foremost, jurisdictional point of view or legal point of view. That's very important, because whether you are a decentralized maxi or not, it all comes down to making people feel that they are more secure. Now, we have regulators asking for things that are legitimate on one side, but against the principle of decentralization. So we need to find the right balance here, because being fully maxi on decentralized with no KYC, no AML, no CFT and procedures I think it's way too anarchist. So I love that, but it's a bit too extreme. On the other side, we don't want to be fully government controlled, and the spirit, actually, the Satoshi spirit, should be like, that we are actually decoupling from that traditional finance, or in any case, from being fully controlled. But there has to be like, a sense of like, that regulation, they need to play the part, whilst on the other side we grant full decentralization, self-sovereignty, and that we stay permissionless. But we need some kind of regulation, there's no doubt about that. Even though you are building a decentralized exchange that doesn't fully require like KYC or AML, but I think at some point it's perfectly understandable that we also want to. It's an ethical question here. We need to protect our customers. In if we are building a app that they are feeling protected. Second, technology-wise, this is very complex, but definitely projects launching in space, they need to have at least a basic audit. Any protocol, any smart contract, it has to go through a sort of scrutiny. Now, there are many, of course, players in the space, different cost range, which means different cost in terms of technology check of the protocol, the security layers, and so forth. I was actually speaking to a company here in Malta, quite a prominent audit firm, and I was very curious about. He was we're talking, we're like at lunch, and he was telling me the story of this very well-known, I can say that, very well-known protocol that got hacked, so to speak, for several millions. And basically, it was an inside job. And he told me that out of all the hacks that we know, 60% are inside jobs. So
social engineering.
yeah, absolutely. Or whoever has like the password of a multi-sig and so on. So it really like I always wonder, oh my god, yes, you find ways on to hack a protocol. It's actually quite complicated. I mean, you need to know what you're doing, but 60% it's inside job. So we're talking about bad actors.
Yeah.
So there's no control in that. Say that you open a traditional company, you register to the local authorities, whether it's like chamber of commerce, whether it's like local. That doesn't really, it's not really required for like a decentralized protocol. Think about that. So who's ultimately responsible for that? So there has to be like some kind of liability, in my opinion, that builders are carrying, and that's fundamental. Otherwise, we don't build an ethos and an ethics of conscious work. In my opinion, that would be like completely like that's in terms of technology. So audit is the minimum requirement for projects to run out there. So if you ever invest, check if that protocol, that app, that smart contract has been audited by someone at least legit.
Yeah, for sure. I think compliance, when you speak about compliance, I start looking at, some of these major big tech Web2 companies that are starting to leverage these tokenization models to sort of creep into the cracks to the Web3 space. Like,
Yes.
for instance, a good case study right now is
Yeah.
X, or formerly Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And for me, they're very interesting because I've been tracking, since the time when Elon bought, I like to call it Twitter. Look, let's just, I don't like calling it X, but when Elon bought Twitter, I was just looking at to see what he would do, and a couple of things that I just noticed, right, is he open sourced the code, right? He went and then got the licenses, right, for financial products, right?
Yeah.
He then rebranded to X, and I'm looking at the landscape of what I think he's going to do next. And I think he's slowly going to transfer into the Web3 space because they already have the sort of compliance to an extent.
Yeah.
And so I think the smooth transition into Web3 will be more seamless for these big tech companies. You look at even Microsoft, who just partnered with Aptos, right?
Yeah.
To create some synergy between Web3 and AI, So I'm looking at the landscape of also Amazon. They have the Amazon NFT marketplace that they just launched too as well. So do you think that all of the stuff that's happening within this space, we are just kind of the guinea pigs for then the Web2 companies that are the big tech conglomerates to come in and sort of put their foothold in the state? You also look at then BlackRock, who's then now applying for a spot Bitcoin ETF. So are we just the guinea pigs for the big boys to then step in and give the actual stuff that what BlockFi and what Voyager and what Celsius were supposed to do, but they're just more bigger, more compliant, more known? They have the branding. Do you think that this is they're just going to integrate this into their business model and then wipe out the majority of Web3? It's just a thesis that I have in my head.
That's a great question. Of course, I don't have the crystal ball here, but definitely they have the capacity to onboard their audiences. So, which is not Web3 native type of audience, but Web2. So they have brands, they have marketing power, and they definitely have technical capabilities to integrate with Web3 with blockchain.
Yeah.
Will they take over the space? I don't think so. That's my gut feeling. Also, because as I was mentioning to you before, we will be facing a phase where decentralized computing power, CPU, GPUs, and storage is going to be more and more needed. It's probably even more cost efficient than traditional centralized providers, say AWS, for instance.
Yeah.
So that would probably favor the birth of new plethora of projects in the space that are going to be, I'm saying, antagonists of the behemoths. And luckily, because we need more fragmentation in the market, we don't need again face what we sort of face in Web2. Although it's then thanks to them that we're here. Let's also be honest. But on the flip side, no, I don't believe that they will be seriously taking over the Web3 space. What is though happening is definitely they're taking over AI. And we saw it, AI in different shapes, in different forms. They have capital to deploy. They have technicalities, technical capabilities. And yes, that's what's happening. That is scary, in my opinion. Because, again, we are rely on few centralized players playing up with centralized data, not decentralized data. So what might happen in that space is that Web2 giants will face the competition of small tech AI companies fully leveraging on decentralized Web3 solutions because of its more agile probably to build.
Yeah, for sure. And I truly believe that because these big tech companies are getting into AI, they're going to kill a lot of startups. They're going to kill a lot of the smaller startups with their ability to the resources they have, first of all. And I also have a theory in regards to how I see AI and blockchain, because when I look at it, because blockchain, you open source the code. And so it's easy for anyone to fork your code and then rebrand it, right? And in AI, it's making it more easily and more accessible for people to copy someone's business model quickly, because it's for the first time ever in human history, we have a tool set that's able to scale labor and intellect, at a rapid pace. And so you need less labor, you need less intellect, you need less time to think. You can just ask the AI and it would literally regurgitate the information that you need, and then you can go ahead and execute. So my theory is about content, right? Because if I have a business that's successful and then someone else is able to copy it after they see it starting to generate revenue in a short period of time, then what's going to separate my business and someone else's business? Well, it's marketing, right? And branding, right? And so I think the best form of branding and marketing is content, right? And so I think that the content creation space is actually going to grow a lot more than what people think, because people are going to then want to trust people who have been establishing authority over the course of time, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And if you look at the landscape of the internet now, currently we have around 5 billion people on the internet. And the projection is supposed to be by 2030, we're going to have around 90% of people on the internet. And by 2050, almost everybody will be on the internet. So the pie continues to increase with the amount of audience then you can then grab, and then you can leverage that audience to increase your user base, your profit margin, and so on. So I'm a really proponent of content because of this, but I don't know what you think about this particular theory in regards to AI, open source code in the Web3 space, and where things are going to transition to in the future.
Well, it's very complicated, of course, but you mentioned probably one of the key components that are going to change AI or the way we use it, which is like content makers, content producers, and content creators. We saw that many times, actually. What we are seeing is that nowadays there's no infrastructure to basically provide even proper rights and royalties to content creators, if not leveraging on some algorithms that are providing views from the known platforms. So that mechanism is all to change. Also, we need to understand how data is going to be fetched and gathered, and what sources that we use. That leads to a very worrisome type of biased output. So we need to probably, even that, there's like more than an ethos, and we see how regulations again are going to cope with that, raising concern. Also, finally, I'm saying that if content on one side is going to be a factor, I would say that we're going to see applications that are where blockchain and AI together are going to really make a shift from like what we used to do it before to what we are going to, and how we're going to access content. So yeah, definitely it's quite an interesting time to be alive and see how this technology is going to display. But again, to me, it will come down again to decentralized storage and CPU. I'm advocating for that quite a lot.
Yes.
Because you have to think that any AI module is leveraging on certain computing power, and the more you have, the more queries you have on, the more access you have to a tool, the more computing power you need, and that's not sustainable in the long run. So also for startups, because they have to face extreme high cost in terms of operation costs when you have computing power that expensive. So yeah, those solutions are needed. Otherwise, we will never see the backbone infrastructure that is needed to run this kind of AI applications together with blockchain. If we don't have that, I don't see that really scaling. Actually, that will be probably in favor of having the Web2 giants using these type of applications for with their own intent.
Yeah, for sure. Does a part of you fear AI at all?
No, actually, I find it very fascinating. Of course, we're talking about generative AI. Well, the part that I'm quite concerned about is the biased outputs that we have, but also the source. It's like reading two books and merging them together. That's my source, and it's publicly available. How many AIs are going to get that source? So technically, we are just replicating, not creating new content. That's the thing. We're just like meshing old existing contents into a different shape, but that's not creating new. That's like, long theory, but my opinion is that private data sets are going to come in the space and probably make a difference in terms of what type of output are we getting out of an LLM.
So you don't think, because I'm on the fence that the AI has the ability to generate its own original content, and so when I look at it from the long term perspective of, like, 5 to potentially 10 years, I see, okay, look at the movie industry, and could we get to a point where the AI is powerful and intellectual enough to regenerate an entire movie, and if it can do that, then okay, what's going to happen to actors and filmmakers and all these things when I can make my own TV series with the generative AI myself? Why should I then get a Netflix subscription? What if
Yeah.
I can tell the AI to then copy the entire script and then generate the entire video footage of the entire script, so that way I don't have to pay for the monthly reoccurring payment that I need to pay for Netflix or something like that. So I think it could get something wild, and to that extent, you can look at the hackers. For instance, in the cybersecurity industry now, they use and leveraging AI to make malware, right? And so I'm looking at this beast, and I don't fear it, but what I do see is a potential landscape of things going sideways, going left, really quickly. And if you also look at, for instance, the elections are going to come out very, very soon next year, the presidential elections in the States, particularly, I'm speaking about. I just see, okay, what kind of propaganda is going to be true and what kind of propaganda is going to be false, because people are going to be able to eventually at some point manipulate the AI to then generate a form of content that isn't actually real. So the integrity of content is going to be put out, which is, again, another reason why I like NFTs, because I could see NFTs as a verification mechanism that we can leverage to then verify what's real and what's not real, and be like, no, you can look, this was minted on chain by me, this is my transaction hash, and so this is why I'm so an advocate for NFTs. Also, if you look at the landscape too as well of, for instance, I'm expat, right? I'm currently living now in Bulgaria, and the immigration process was terrible, right? And imagine if we could implement these digital sort of verification models, right? These DIDs, the digital identifiers, something like this, and to where, it could be NFTs, it could not be NFTs, but some kind of digital encrypted mechanism that could also be smart in terms of being able to change the metadata when necessary.
Yeah.
And that way it could then streamline these processes, so I don't have to go back to the immigration office 17 billion times to go, for something very simple, as, okay, just fact check, obviously I'm not a criminal, obviously, I have money in the bank, I have a business, I have these things. So I think that NFTs can be leveraged to streamline these processes for verification checks, and so people aren't standing in line and wasting time. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that specifically with everything I just said. I know it's quite a lot, but yeah.
Well, you mentioned actually two points, which is the ID and SBT in itself. So digital identity, soulbound tokens as well. They carry all of your history, like, certificates, medical records, and so forth. We all know that if there was just one slim chance nowadays to move to blockchain and basically what's unleashing in terms of bureaucracy, especially NFTs or soulbound tokens, that would be great. But I don't see that happening in the future. Probably we're going to have some, because that's bypassing governments. And in all reality, in all fairness, that's I'm not saying that it's utopistic. I think each government is going to have its own private chain. at some point, but still, like, sort of secluded from the outer world, which is what we want to achieve ultimately. If you read The State Network from the former CEO of Coinbase, it's very, very fascinating in that regard. So it's a recommended reading. As per, AI, look, definitely we're going to have, like, some kind of conscious AI that is able to generate. When I say generating new things, it's not generating from scratch. Like all of our human history is tied to the to the previous knowledge that we fish from, right? So it's a constant evolution, and we can see AI is exactly like that. My problem here is providing rights to who's generating contents and making sure that not few players are actually making money without paying the rights to content creators.
Yeah.
And owning that as it's our creature. No, actually, you need to pay due where's credit is due. You know what I mean? So it's very important that we provide a framework where content producers and providers are going to be rewarded for that. Also, because if we stop having content creators, we just have a replica of a replica of a replica done from an AI, which is not generating anything new. Ultimately, it's going to be an infinite loop of, I've seen that before. It's I do believe that human brain is able to produce from almost from scratch with its own knowledge, whilst AI needs a substrate of sources to fish from. But if you stop the sources, then AI was AI at the point. So it's very important that we define that. So we have public data sets, we have private data sets. It will be interesting what we're going to see in the future.
For sure. I wanted to just go back a little bit with interoperability, because I did have an interesting point that I wanted to talk to about too as well. Because when you look at Bitcoin, right, a light bulb hit me maybe about 2 months ago, something like that, where I now foresee Bitcoin as an interoperability solution for financial payments, right? And payment providers specifically, right? So when you look at, for instance, I have a Cash App account. You can't get a Cash App account, maybe because you're not American or whatever, and you have a PayPal account. For us to send money, one of us needs to get one of those two payment providers, right?
Yeah.
But if the Bitcoin network is adopted, then I can just send you Bitcoin because it's adopted on PayPal, it's adopted on Cash App, and that solves then the issue of value transfer, right? And so the money can come quicker, right? And so you look at the landscape of globalization, and people need to move money and currencies in different exotic locations, right? And exotic currencies. And if there was a global standard, right, that everyone just adopted, which is Bitcoin, for instance, in this case, right?
Yeah.
Then money can seamlessly flow, and then it can be swapped when needed to, for fiat or whatever, but it can serve as that interoperability solution. I don't know what you think about that specifically, but I think that this is a really big use case that I think people aren't really looking at in regards to Bitcoin, how it can be leveraged in regards to streamlining the process of payment transfer.
Well, again, it's adoption. It's already happening in a way. In some places in Africa, for instance, Bitcoin is the main currency, and it's been used as to fight, inflation of local currencies. There are even places that you and I, we know, like all the rest of Web3 people, like El Salvador, for instance, they like using now Bitcoin as national reserve. So it's probably in some places makes more sense to have Bitcoin as actually a local coin, local currency. And that would change the whole narrative, because at the point, who's going the on-off ramp, fiat or Bitcoin? So if we shift that narrative into Bitcoin, then it's going to be fiat off ramp rather than,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Off the ramp. Off the ramp. So we really need to see how this narrative is going to evolve. Of course, we know that making a fiat to fiat payments passing by Bitcoin. Well, Ripple was doing that with what was it called? I can't remember. X. No, I can't remember the framework. They built something like was like used between inner bank transactions to lower cost and fees, like kind of like sort of Swift payment, but done through XRP. The thing is that we need to understand what is going to be the main currency and the main reserve in central banks. If Bitcoin is going to be adopted as a digital reserve, at a point, I think we might see Bitcoin becoming like a means of payment.
Yeah.
And at that point, we don't need to probably worry about on and off ramp from fiat.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. When you look at the landscape of maximalism, what is your take on the Bitcoin maximalism approach? And do you think majority of these altcoins are just experimental, or do you think that some of them have like real use case and real business models that are sustainable over the course of time?
Well, okay. Speaking of the mother chain, it fits a purpose, of course. Bitcoin is fully decentralized, as we know, whilst there's no altcoin that can really claim that. So we need to go back to the source. So my point here would be that whilst Bitcoin can have a real, I would say, someone like use digital gold. I don't believe in that, but I do believe that it could be used to some extent as a currency, including stable coins. But that's a different whole ball game. Let's not get in there and CBDC. But on the other side, I think that all coins have an opportunity to develop real business models and real revenues when they are based on that. Otherwise, they are just like built out of thin air, and it's basically just speculation. What I wish for the space is really to get rid of all these speculation market makers and some unnecessary exchanges that are just like pumping the market up and down. So we don't need that really. We need to create something that is stable for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And my final question is, because when I look at the stable coin market, right? I think because you look at USDT, they made what, $80 million in revenue, or was it profit in Q2? I believe it might have been profit. But anyways, they were able to generate a significant amount of return, right? And you see, PYUSD, PayPal, drop their stable coin. Do you think this is going to spark something where we're going to have the sort of a lot more of corporate going to get into the stablecoin market because they see it's very lucrative? Where do you see the landscape of stablecoins in regards to that?
We're gonna see like different stable coins first of all in the future. I'm not talking about algorithmic stable coins. We saw them failing in the past.
Yeah.
But the idea was great. I mean, like I love the idea of being like a collateral into other, stable and basket of tokens. But the reality is that they proved to be like really, really weak and fragile for massive attack. Stable coin, that's a whole different ball game. If you see USDC, it's actually there are more traditional institution behind that. Circle is not nearly a Web3 company. It's I would say that it's more a traditional company. Nothing against that. But we need to be aware of what are really stable coins, especially when CDBC are going to be, or if they are going to be adopted. Have you ever noticed that you don't have a Chinese stablecoin? Think about
Yeah.
that. Think about
Yeah.
that. So this is something that we need to see how it's going to progress in the future. Probably there's going to be different stable coins, but with different purposes. Maybe stable coins backed by real world assets, for instance, stable coins based on gold. We already have, like Pax Gold, for instance, one of those. Melt is another one. So, yeah, you need to see how they are going to function. But again, you need to see in the on and off ramp world. CBDC are a sort of gate to control basically the access in and out, the inflow and outflow from the crypto world back to fiat. So that's the purpose of CBDC, besides all the stories that has been told.
Alessandro, thank you so much, man, for coming on. Do you have any closing thoughts, man, before we go?
Let's build. that's I can swear on your podcast, but
Yeah. I got the point, man.
You
Yeah,
got the
man.
point.
We'd love to have you on again, man. You have a wealth of knowledge, man. I really appreciate you. Where can people find you on the internet?
LinkedIn mainly.
LinkedIn. Okay, I'll leave a link
Yeah.
down below, man. It's been a
Cheers.
pleasure, man. We'll do it again one of these days, man. Peace.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you very much, man.
Yeah.
Speak soon.
Take care. Bye.